Welcome again to Broken Roads. I'm Colin Mackell, I'm your host, and today I've got my guest, Dr. Niklas Serning. So I'd just like to kind of tell the audience here a little bit about who Dr. Niklas Serning is, what you do, your kind of work, and what your interests are.
Yep. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I'm a psychotherapist, psychologist. It's not much of a difference between those things. I'm also an officer in the British Army. I live in Bristol, Swedish by birth, and that's me.
Fantastic. Well, that's quite a range of kind of skill sets there. So, what is your interest with initially with psychology? What was it that drew you to psychology, and then on to psychotherapy?
Well, I promised myself I wouldn't say it's been messy, but now I've already said it. It's been messy. I've had loads of different careers.
Mm-hmm.
I always wanted to kind of do something good, save the world, that whole thing. So it was environment and it was psychology. Ended up in the United Nations, did a lot of humanitarian stuff all over the world in war zones for several years. And then it got a little bit hectic in Afghanistan, so I got out and decided to retrain as a full-on psychotherapist first. So I started training as a psychotherapist, got kicked out of psychotherapist school, and then went into psychologist school, which is a little story if you want to hear it one day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd be interested in hearing it. You're not kind of. I have to kind of scratch that itch.
So, I started at Karuna, which is a Buddhist psychotherapist training.
Right.
And it's really good training, actually, in terms of the skills of sitting with difficulty. They also have lots of crazy psychodynamic theories. One of them was that you're not allowed to fraternize with any of the other course participants. So when we announced that I was going to get married to one of them, I guess the cat was out of the bag.
So you broke the rules.
So I broke the rules. A very naughty boy.
Yeah.
But I remember Karuna. Karuna was, so everyone had to sit with suffering and sit with pain and stuff like that. And it kind of drove me nuts. So they had this big fire chimney thing. I remember building these big fires. I ended up setting the chimney on fire at Karuna.
Right.
But not by purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So I got out of that and then went to NSPC, which was an existential training. So less spiritual, still more like philosophical, less psychodynamic, less woo-woo, which I really enjoyed. And I guess I've gotten back a little bit onto the spiritual path again after that. But so that's kind of where I come from, avoiding the woo-woo, liking the philosophy.
Yeah, and that's where I encountered you. You were a tutor. I was studying, hoping to kind of gain a doctoral qualification, but it wasn't for me, and I decided to kind of move on. But I got a lot from the course. It was definitely one of the richer courses. The material there, some of the people that I met as well, and again, a lot of kind of world famous kind of philosophers and psychologists and contributors. So yeah, it was great from that point of view. I got to meet a lot of people that I only read about in other courses and who had written books, and I got to meet a lot of those people. So yeah, a little bit like meeting a lot of your kind of heroes and a lot of your stars. So, and I remember you being a lecturer there, and it was always very kind of engaging. Always enjoyed what you kind of brought, but you later became my clinical supervisor. Yeah. But again, we had no idea that was going to be the case. It was definitely nothing that I had kind of considered at the time, but it just seemed to gravitate in that direction. And I do remember reading your PhD thesis, and I was really kind of drawn to this idea of you putting yourself in danger. You seem to be kind of going out to really dangerous places and asking interesting questions and kind of seeing if you could put yourself to use, and really in the kind of let's say the grittier side of humanity. Has that always been something that's kind of part of your kind of adventurous and curious spirit?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't really thought about it, but you're right. Yeah, pushing that edge.
Yeah.
Seeing, I guess it's two ways: pushing the edge of existence, or trying to see the most interesting side of the world, which is often at the fringes of society, right? Or war zones, etc. But also pushing the edges of ideas to see whether they hold.
Yeah.
So I guess a bit like you, if someone says that cars are always yellow, you and I will always be looking for a car that's not yellow. And they're not yellow.
Yeah.
Always.
So the work that you were drawn there to do, because as you said, you were looking for something more transcendent, something more meaningful. You wanted to do good in the world, and that's the initial driver again. And what was it? What was the kind of the parallels and the contrast? And you were talking about, you're talking about yellow cars. If you're kind of told something, then you go out and you test it and you look for yourself. So is that natural kind of inbuilt psychologist, that kind of inborn psychologist spirit that I think all of us have, that curiosity. But what was it that you think about that work there that kind of really appealed to you? What was it? What was your aim and what was your draw to it, like more specifically?
Well, I mean, the idea in Western society these days, at least, maybe not 50 years ago, and it's definitely not like this in most other cultures, but in Western society, there is this kind of childhood focus, right? There's even a term for it, neontocracy or something like that, that it's all about children. So that's where we think that the personality starts and the choices get made. And this is kind of where whatever happens here will then serve, whatever that acorn is, whatever that ground is, will then serve to become the tree. So I figured after the United Nations of trying to do like peace building and sexual health and civic education and stuff in Afghanistan, etc., going like, okay, well, that didn't really work that well. We didn't have that much lasting effects. Okay, fine. If that doesn't work, let's go to the core of the problem, right? Let's go to childhood. Let's become a psychotherapist. Let's first try to identify what these landmines are of your past, and let's diffuse the things. So that was the original idea, which is, I guess, closely aligned with that psychodynamic Freud thing. And that got a couple of hits then from the existential school, which is more about staying in the now. But that was the original.
Yeah. And in terms of your exploration into that work, what do you think, what was it that appealed to you and what was it that didn't kind of sit well with you? So when you were kind of coming up against those ways of kind of delivering therapy or those theories from which you kind of embedded your theoretical approach within, what was it that was, how are you beginning to shape and form yourself as a therapist? What was kind of happening for you?
And it might be helpful to just have a look at what the different psychotherapies are here.
Yeah.
And so if you start with a psychodynamic, it's all about the past. And it's a lot about, so if we pretend that you're my client and I'm the therapist, it's a lot about what I believe in you. So I might believe that you want to have sex with your mother or that you hate your father or any of these theories, right? That the Oedipal complex, etc. And I kind of put that on you. So that of course didn't resonate with me. It felt stuck, didn't feel useful. And they have the other end of therapy, which was CBT, which is more like, let's just see it as more mechanic, more effective, right here, right now. It felt a little bit flat. I think I have more respect for it now. Met more CBT therapists, and they are quite relational. The existential bit, of course, I love the philosophical stuff. Sadly, about the existential, is not very effective. Yeah, like we can get a deep understanding of who you are, what's going on, what are your choices in life, and what's important to you. But then, how do we change it? Who knows, right? And finally, the humanistic, which is more cuddly, more maybe not in the original Rogers idea, but if you look at most humanistic person-centered counselors, it's more, how are you? And it's lovely, and that kind of holding is lovely. Sometimes it feels like humanistic counselors have this kind of FOMO for the psychodynamic. They actually wish to go to the past. And I don't think that's so helpful. So at the end of the day, after, what is it? Is it 20 years of practice? Something like that? I am now firmly in the right here, right now, suss out what you want to do, what's important to you, why you want to do it, who you are, and perhaps have some tricks if you're stuck in, like, you might want to do X, but you just, I don't know, you might want to work harder.
Sure.
In your, or be less lazy, and you have the motivation, but you just can't get unstuck. Then there are some tricks that we can use.
Yeah.
That's where I'm now.
Yeah. So I kind of would describe that, and I kind of relate to that myself. I kind of describe, I suppose, my approach as being interrelational. And so it kind of pretty much draws on the relationship, but it doesn't necessarily give it a frame other than what's in front of me. I'm working with what's there. Obviously, I have a lot of different material and a lot of different kind of theoretical kind of underpinnings to draw from. However, what is it that convinced you in your, or not so much convinced you, maybe that's too strong a word, but what was it that began you leaning away from this idea that the whole, that personhood, personality, and all the experiences were growing out of the beginning? Because it seems natural, right? It seems like a natural, logical kind of place to go to. You know, if we're looking for the genesis of something, it's the beginning. So it's when we're born, it's the environment. So I guess from my perspective, it's like, well, if that stuff's at play, and then that becomes interrelational, it becomes into the interrelatedness of what we're doing. But if it's not, if it's something else, and we're working with something else, then I'm just working with the person in the present, and I'm working with what they're bringing to that session there and then. And just interested to kind of see your take. So I get to hear about the way in which you kind of view that specifically. So attachment theory gives a lot of, let's say, it fixes the lens, doesn't it? Very much on childhood experiences, broken attachments, failed attachments. And I think that the emphasis is pretty much that if certain things don't happen at critical times, then the whole project of the person is kind of broken and irreparable. And I suppose that's where I have a leaning towards it, as I think that there's something of value, and they're saying a lot of interesting stuff. But I think the emphasis and the degree to which we kind of assign kind of salience or significance to those points, I think I'm a little bit unsure about.
So, well, first, what brought me to it? What made me question it? I think that I held on to many of my psychodynamic kind of in the past attachment, all that stuff, ideas well into practicing as an existential therapist. And I just found that it didn't work. So that's just, that's N=1 research. So that doesn't hold very well. But that I just found in the therapy room, I kept going over whatever. So, I mean, we a lot of this podcast will be about your book, which I've actually read twice now. And
sorry.
No, it gets better. Just push through the first time.
Yeah.
And so if I were to go over and over your childhood, which was tricky as hell, I think there is a room for getting that closure. Okay, this happened. This is what I went through. Let's air that. Fair. Absolutely. But that kind of idea that it all stems from the beginning, it didn't work for me. Didn't seem to work for my clients, maybe because I'm terrible at it and all the other ones are better. Number two, it is totally Western focused. People don't think like this. We didn't think like this 50 years ago. Like in the other cultures where I've been, or other cultures I've read about, anthropologists have gone to, the idea that it all starts in childhood, and it is absolutely Western chauvinistic to think that we have that. But in terms of attachment theory, I was going to give you this analogy later, but I'm going to give you an analogy.
Sure.
It's specific for the podcast, brand new, made for this podcast.
Fantastic.
You have two pictures. So imagine this acorn becoming, that classic tree. Yeah. So there's a kernel that grows into a solid tree trunk, branches out. That's kind of the image of Freudian,
Mm-hmm.
psychodynamic, psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, attachment theory, and now these have all been gradually debunked, according to me. And then other people have come up with, oh, but no, it's trauma, it's ACEs, it's Gabamati comes up with these harebrained ideas. It's all trauma, and they try to hold on to this image that it starts there, where notably, pretty much only the therapist that can fix it. Mm-hmm. That should make us all suspicious. But it's the core that leads to the situation, the linear link between that maternal distance, the racism, the horrific abuse that then leads to the violence or the mental health issue. Yeah? That's one picture. You have that tree. Next to the tree, you have your classic Bristolian brambles. Yeah? Mm-hmm. That kind of impenetrable 3D mess that we always come upon here. Mm-hmm. You and I know it well. You pull on one thing, everything else moves, yeah? Everything's linked together in an unholy mess of things. So, I mean, we're going to argue about this later, about how much is genetics, and or maybe we'll agree, but that would be boring, so let's argue about it, is that 50% of these bramble vines, they are defined by genetics, whether they're green, red, thorny, carrying nice blackberries or not. But the actual identity of the bush is how they're all mixed up, right? So imagine how, yes, a lot of it's genetic, half of it, but they all hook in with social class, with the abuse that you experienced, your dreams, latest political ideas, Catholicism, Islam, whatever. Yeah, an unholy mess there, or holy if you mention the religions. If you were into ACEs, so that big old tree idea, you go into that bramble and you go, oh, look, over there. We have, they grew up in a racist society, or their parents were divorced, or they were suffering over abuse. And I go, yeah. But there are also 50 other, or like everything affects everything. Mm-hmm. How can you say that this one is the one that affects it? Mm. Especially when other cultures don't agree with that, and the research is very sketchy on it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think that then I was going to go to the ACE studies, but I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to say. So
we're coming on to that stuff, aren't we? In the next podcast,
yes,
which is going to be really interesting. But I'm kind of, I'm aware of some of your views. I've obviously read your paper. I watched one of the podcasts you were on. I find it immensely interesting. I'm kind of, obviously, I guess my side of the fence is the N+1 equals my experience, right? So I'm kind of looking at it. I lived it. I experienced it. So I'm thinking about it more personally. What does that kind of abuse do? I mean, I don't necessarily like the word trauma. I don't necessarily like that as a kind of description. I like descriptions such as absolute hell, unimaginable, things that I don't have words for. I just have feelings. I just have a way in which I relate to it internally. Did it shape who I was? No, I really like your idea of the bramble bush, because some of it doesn't matter what your experience is. Your genes are going to kind of produce what it does. So that's already programmed, and it will be what it is. Whether it's attached to this unholy or holy mess is another question. And I think this idea, the whole idea of psychology and, and science, social science in that sense is, again, for me, in a wider sense, and I say this in one of the closing remarks in my book, where I talk about science, about our restlessness with powerlessness. We're kind of getting back to the sense of, we've got answers to this whole vast universe of kind of complexities, and and you're right, the arrogance that's assumed in certain theories to exclude 90% of the planet and their experiences and their cultures and the way that they come to different issues and the way they experience the world and the meanings that they interpret and all of this stuff. I do think that this our voice is the loudest. The Western voice has been the predominant voice, and it's been the loudest voice, and therefore, and that may be for a reason I don't know. Maybe it's because it's inherently kind of rooted within Christianity, for example. So maybe this uniformity comes from there, for good or for bad, as some might say. But
yeah. So just say, so in terms of, you spoke earlier about attachment theory.
Yeah.
And trauma. And I do think if we have the bramble analogy, then of course, brambles, as you know, if you try to get through brambles, those things are bloody well attached to each other, right? And we are attaching continually. One can even argue that your personality is your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So, absolutely. But attachment theory is a different thing than being attached. Mm-hmm. In the same way, ACEs, like some of the stuff you've written about in your book, I find it very hard to sit there and go, sorry, Colin, it's just your genes. No. Some of these things really drove you to heroin. I also think that some of those things drove you to build Chrysalis. So, good and bad.
Yeah.
So ACE theory or trauma theory is this event, or in complex PTSD, these number of events lead to this kind of toxic brain. They have this kind of just on the edge of science that they go with. Can I use one more analogy?
Sure.
Now, this is not mine, but I think this will come throughout our discussions. And it's the Mott and Bailey fallacy. And I always get this wrong. Some philosopher that came up with it. Sometimes you have ideas, right? Let's say you have someone that says that gender is totally a social construct. Yeah, there's nothing about you that's male. It's just because you were born in Glasgow, and this is how they define masculinity. And you and I will go then. But there is some biology to it, right? There can be some to it. And the person then retreats and goes to like a safer position where they're saying, well, there is some culture in terms of how we express gender, isn't it? And everyone would agree on that. Now, the idea there is that the Mott is this castle keep, which is easy to defend, where, of course, gender is influenced by culture. Women are different in India compared to in Bristol and in Sweden. Yes. Then you have the Bailey, which is part of the castle which is more spacious, where they go, everything about gender is a social construct, right? So when attacked, they retreat to the safe thing. Now, in terms of the ACEs and then attachment theory, an ACE theorist, as an adverse childhood experience, a trauma theorist, would say 44% of depression could be stopped if we fixed all the ACEs. That's California Surgeon General, actually. Surgeon General, actually, that said something like that. That's a pretty outrageous statement about how important ACEs are. Like, how do you know that of all the million things that Colin experienced, that it was just that?
Sure.
Well, then they can go, well, don't you think that what Colin experienced influenced him? Well, of course it did. Same thing with attachment theory. It's like, this is the idea, something that was created in the 50s. Women had gotten power. After the war, they had gotten power to get back into the workplace. That was not so nice for us blokes, we used to have the power. And then, lo and behold, a man creates a theory that says it's really important to have the boob very early, all the time. Again, not at all reflected in other societies, where there are wet nurses, where there are mixture of who actually takes care of the kid. Is it grandma? Is it your sister, your cousin? But in the Western theory, it was all about the boob. Keep the woman at home. Yeah, preferably chained between the kitchen and the bedroom, right? Or the baby. They didn't actually say that, but
they meant to.
I feel that way, and so it's a very simplistic theory of saying this is how important. It creates a lot of guilt.
Sure,
and it's fundamentally untrue. And when you critique it, they go, "What do you think? Parents mean nothing," because they run up to the Mott.
Yeah,
that's all the analogies.
Yeah, no, I think they're all interesting. I think they've all got kind of validity, and I think the important thing though is the difference between not having love and not having someone to take care of you. And I think the attachment theory, Stephen Bowlby said, himself retreated from the position of being mum, which was an obvious guilt trip of trying to reverse the influx of women into the workplace and away from the home. And it was a good and effective guilt trip because it kind of started to reverse the trend, and so men could take their dominant place in society. And of course, feminist theories, I'm sure, are kind of rich with kind of narrative and information now. But I can kind of see that the difference here from an attachment point of view. So, I mean, a lot of people talk about, conversations about my book, for example, when I talk about my experiences. I lived in extreme poverty. I lived in a very poor place. I mean, we didn't have anything. I lived as if it was a third world country, almost. And some people who live in a third world country might take issue with that statement, right? But in comparison and relatively speaking, but it wasn't that for me that left this enduring sense of kind of sadness and feeling kind of just, because the problem, again, here where it gets really complex, is I wouldn't know I don't have a prototype Colin who grew up in that environment with the things that I think that I missed out on. And so I don't have somebody to compare myself to. So I could have been the same. I could have actually gone through all of that and come out and have been exactly the same Colin. I don't know that, right? And it's an interesting kind of thing to muse over.
You do know it a little bit, because when you went and lived with your uncle and aunt.
Sure.
And there was that you started engaging with school, and I think you ran riot and just went a bit bonkers, right?
Yeah.
And you got kicked out of school, and they didn't like you anymore. It just like started that slide.
Yeah.
That was a sliding door moment.
Yeah.
Right. We don't know. Maybe you were forever destined to go to prison, but I don't think so. I think that there were many sliding doors. Now, let's not forget that the human being is the most plastic learning entity that we know of, right? We can become nuclear physicists, and we can become warlords.
Mm-hmm.
We can live on the savannah, and we can live on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a learning animal learning person, right? And of course, if you grow up and you know that I can't say that I miss my mom, I can't say that I can't trust that people will have my back. Well, yeah, it would be idiotic for your brain not to pick up that message.
Sure.
That wouldn't be adaptive.
No, and you're right. I mean, it would be an insult to us as human beings to kind of not look back on how much we've adapted from and how much we've come through. And I think you're right. I think leaning into that trauma language, it paints a picture of this enfeebled, kind of broken creature who's so unmalleable and breakable and yes, kind of, rigid and fixed. It doesn't at all paint a picture of my experience of people and the people that I meet. Definitely doesn't paint a picture of my story.
Because your broken roads led you here.
Yeah.
But you walked them and you got here.
Yeah, I lived them and breathed them. Yes,
exactly.
Yeah.
So that is still true.
Yeah, that is still true. And like I say, I don't have Colin type 2 who grew up with mum and who grew up not being abused and who didn't get all those experiences. So it's always a point, if nothing else, of curiosity and of interest. And I think that there's bigger questions as well. If we're zooming into the micro kind of interactions but it's kind of like some of those ways of being. It's about what kind of society does it produce as well. It's like, what are the fruits of that? So you can be many things, and you can kind of grow up and adapt and kind of live in different environments. So it's like, what is the kind of what does it produce? Because we're kind of into this idea, aren't we, that families, strong, stable families that are supportive, families that are enduring and consistent and present, create kind of fairly stable human beings. But again, it's this idea that there is such a thing as a stable human being. So I don't know what it's like to step inside the body of another person. I don't really know what it's like to occupy somebody, breathe inside their skin and experience the world. So I have to assume that there are, there are better environments for children to grow up in.
Absolutely. And I think when I first read your book, it was shocking. And I was impressed by how the hell you got from that to all the stuff you've done. The second time I read your book, I already knew what I was going to read. So what then came to the foreground was culture. Like, what kind of culture? Is this a good culture? Maybe Glaswegian culture is great now, but that specific pocket of culture that you lived in, that is not a culture that's conducive to human flourishing.
No.
And there are many ways to have families and many cultures have different kinds of families. But at the end of the day, cultures that thrive have some kind of way to create a functional, caring whole where people can grow up somewhat okay.
Yeah.
And that's what I take on from the book on second reading, that where we should use our ammunition, as it were, might, fine. Since after you've gone through all that, therapy, fine. If you want to talk about it, if you want to come up with new ways of being in the world after all you've learned there, hallelujah. But in order to avoid the next little Colin, that's 3 years old today in Glasgow, from going through all the stuff that you've gone through, this is a culture change. We could talk about politics, but I actually think it's more individual than that. I think it's more about people taking their responsibility. There's some part of politics. You mentioned even third world. You grew up in a third world situation. Well, most people do, right? And most people are fine. That's not the issue.
No.
The issue is not the amount of PlayStations. It might be the delta between the number of PlayStations you have and your neighbor has. But more than that, I think it is the quality of your relationships with everyone, not just your parents.
No.
With your mates.
And I agree. And I think what happened to Colin was he eventually came across better relationships. Obviously, it was my faith, which plays a fundamental and key role. I still don't have the answer as a therapist or as anybody, as a human being, beyond the reason why sometimes I kind of go through survivor's guilt, because I kind of think, why me? Why? I have so many people I knew that are dead, so many people that went totally insane and ended up becoming criminally insane, locked up for the rest of their life because they're too dangerous to other people. And I spoke about that in my book as well, because one of the things that intrigued me with psychology, one of the things that intrigued wasn't just my own addiction, wasn't just my own struggles with mental health, wasn't just my own childhood. It was why people become monsters. What is it that causes a person to cross that line? So, and I know from my own humanness that I think that it's really wafer thin. I really do. I think that step from me and you and Sylvie is wafer thin sometimes. Sometimes it might be much more than that, but sometimes it can be wafer thin. And I think just like little decisions that I spoke about a point in my book when I almost murdered my abuser, and I could have done it. I'm not a murderer. It's the last thing I become, but I definitely, if I think about people abusing my children or my family or hurting my family, then there's a murderous part of me that becomes kind of is elicited.
And that's just you thinking inside yourself about something horrible happening with you engaging with your stepdad. We know and I know from my previous the UN work and my army work, we are but days or weeks away from utter chaos. We see that in Rwanda, in Yugoslavia, so Serbia, Croatia, Kosovo, etc. Right? It doesn't take much for the Celtics to go against the Rangers. It doesn't take much for a society to totally become murderers, or rather protecting their own group, so killing the other one, right? So I'm not so curious about what makes a monster. I'm more curious about and fascinated by how well we actually are cohabiting and co-being.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that we need to think carefully about making sure that that prevails, that we have a society that functions like that. It's not automatic.
I think you're talking about, I mean, you know, without kind of getting too much into the kind of culture that exists at the moment, which is, you know, we live, and I'll say this for myself, if I'm not speaking for you, but we live in very strange times, very I would say very dark times, very kind of scary times. You know, there's so much it's up for grabs. There's so much in flux, and I think people are so confused. We've recently had a national inquiry opened up into the grooming gangs, and again, they're being targeted towards one kind of racial group in particular. But putting that aside, one of the things that I was pointing to and talking about in my book was that we almost kind of propagate through our own silence the ability for people to kind of get away with the things that they're doing. No one spoke out against my abuser, you know, and I find it incredible because I can spot most signs of, and maybe it's just because of my experiences, maybe it's because I've been, you know, groomed and trained in the way of kind of pedophiles and the way they think and just their actions. There's something about, I can walk into a room with somebody and instantly I'm, you know, kind of, there's something not right. There's just something about a particular person, their energy, the way they talk, their mannerisms. And it's not paranoia. You know, it is like a third instinct. It's like a super sense, if you like. And this is not unusual. I've heard of this before, that other people who do, who have experienced similar things. And I think it's that heightened sense of kind of self-preservation is something that the brain attunes, and it kind of almost kind of wires in. And it goes one step up from paranoia to kind of like, this is a reality. And like you say, there is a fine, you know, or like I said, there's a fine line. And like you said, that it's not so much a curiosity to why people become that way. I guess killing people and being at war, and I suppose, of course, maybe I'm just being naive and fluffing it up a little bit to kind of think all the other horrendous stuff doesn't happen when I know it does. But for somebody to be deliberately and persistently attracted to a child, for example, and to continually want to manipulate somebody who's so vulnerable, and to kind of continue, you know, it's that type of monster that I was curious about. I was also curious about a lot of the people I grew up with. They were psychopaths. You know, they killed people. Some people killed a lot of people, and it was done with impunity. It was done without any regard. In fact, that was the culture. And it wasn't just a bunch of kids running around with knives or a bunch of kids running around. You know, it was extreme violence, and the aim was to kill people. And I always remember, for me, and this is one of the things that I think is, it always it was always a part of me where my heart was being broken over and over and over again. It was just really sensitive part of me, which of course I couldn't let anybody know about. But I was kind of in there, and I was thinking, this is just heartbreaking. It's like, that person didn't deserve it, or that person didn't ask for it, or you know, and it was just horrible, powerless to do anything about it. Again, like the same as it was as a child. And I think those things were really, really curious to me. And I thought about addiction, you know, because the kind of ideas about addiction were given to me, because I went into many rehabs, and every rehab had a different kind of label, a different way of seeing things. But there was something about my curiosity. It didn't wrangle. I kind of just thought, this isn't telling the whole story or the whole picture. And that was without psychology training. That wasn't, you know, psychotherapy or counseling training or any of that stuff. That was just me kind of thinking, I don't see myself in that. I don't really see myself located in the way that you're describing me, telling me to kind of take on these labels and adopt this position and kind of call myself in this way, these names, and to kind of adopt that personality. And so I think that for me, I was always kind of curious about the world. I was curious about why people did evil things. And I was even more curious, and even today, where we're afraid to call it evil. So in my faith, it's really simple. I get a much simpler answer than the world gives me. And people might say, well, that's the appeal. But I don't think it is. I think it's simple because it's true. Good and evil exists, and I think that we can analyze it, and we can pick apart its kind of, you know, its genesis, or what we think kind of pulls it together. But I think one of the biggest things that drives the social sciences and kind of research is this sense of extreme powerlessness. And I don't think that the more that we try to think about it's the childhood or it's the mechanism or it's this thing or it's that thing, I think we just get further away. For me, I think that we just confuse ourselves.
But that's something where we can then do something. If we as a society say that, no, that's not on, which is what every other society that's not, I can't remember the word, anyway, but like that isn't totally focused on children are always right and children are the wisest one, right? Mm-hmm. Like Greta Thunberg has a better grasp on climate change than you do. And those kind of cultures would be quite clear that we go, this is how it works. We don't have that. And that creates a society that's probably quite weak and probably runs a danger of going, well, what's good for you and what's bad for you? Mm. And you can come up with all kinds of things there. Yeah. As to the psychology of evil, I mean, that's not my territory. I've got some friends in forensic psychology in my army world who are really good at dark triad, and but it almost feels like they don't sleep well at night. They see darkness. Anyway.
Well, I mean, and kind of it's closer related to psychoanalytic theory and kind of object relations and Kleinian work as well, because that's really where a lot of the kind of the psychopathy is kind of being rooted in. They're kind of saying that there was something here about the good, bad breast kind of theory of kind of attachment, but that when the child couldn't pour out its ugliness and couldn't be held and contained, then it learned to hate the object, and so that hatred was kind of bottled inside.
But then if we look at other cultures where usually the mom is not, in those cultures where the mom is usually not the giver of the breast, look at Leonardo da Vinci, who was fed by a stonemason's wife, not his own mother. And he claims that that's why he loved sculpture so much. Mm. Not having your mother's breast can be absolutely fine, doesn't turn you into a psychopath. Not having a breast at all, I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah.
As long as you get there.
Yeah, I guess the theory is kind of saying that children who cannot pour all of their ugliness out and their own darkness out into a space where it's held, so loved and not rejected, is the reason. That's it. I'm not saying that. That's the theory, right? That's the proposal, and a lot of kind of work around psychopathy, psychopaths, sociopaths go back to that, and then some are saying it's something to do with the brain, and the problem with all of this, right, is that ACs, psychopathy, sociopaths, addiction, mental health, and then the whole research around the kind of the neurology and the brain and all of that kind of stuff is that we don't know what happened first. That's the problem.
That's the thing. It's brambles, right?
Yeah.
And in those brambles, when the kid grows up, so when we have this psychopath that grows up, they are bramble, and if you're talking about a bad breast or something like that, maybe mom wasn't available. Maybe there's a reason why mom wasn't available, and maybe they grew up in very tricky areas. Maybe they were bullied. Maybe there wasn't much resources available. Maybe the rest of the family wasn't available. Of course, he shares the genes with the mom and the dad that the mom chose, which might have been a rock and roll dad. So, which the genes you then share. So, it's a million different things. And depending on what kind of modality you have and where you want to make your money, not saying that all psychotherapists are out to make money, but depending on what your religion.
Well, it's a badly paid job, by the way.
Yeah. True. But depending on what religion you have in terms of psychodynamic, etc., you will then look for, see in those brambles, neurology. Their hippocampus is smaller than the returning Vietnam veterans. Mm-hmm. That was research that was debunked, by the way. They tested it again; it wasn't smaller, but that's kind of classic PTSD thing. And you will find what you want to find in the bramble, and you will make that into your tree. I like this analogy now.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about the hippocampus and the kind of the warm and the cold hippocampus theory of why love matters. It's Mary
Sue Gerhardt.
Yeah, Sue Gerhardt. Thank you. Yeah, and so. Obviously, she's got a bit of a cult following, right? Yes. And I think as well that part of part of, let's say, what might confuse or mislead people or cause people to feel that something has credibility is the person who delivers it, because sometimes people are very effective, aren't they? They're very effective orators.
But it's also a Mott and Bailey argument.
Yeah.
Because look at the title of the book. Why Love Matters.
Yeah.
Well, I think love, you think love matters?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we got to plan them here. Love matters. We all agree. Does it matter in the way that Sue Gerhardt says it? Which is early attachment, totally different from anything.
Changes the brain. It changes the structure. It changes the anatomy of the brain.
Learning, me doing this has now changed your brain and everyone out there, because every time you learn, you actually change synapses.
Sure. So we started to learn things about plasticity, didn't we? We learned about the plasticity of the brain, and then that heralded in this whole kind of thing. You can rewire your brain in 90 days and all of this kind of stuff, right?
You can do it in 90 seconds.
90 seconds, yeah. But the question isn't, is the brain malleable and plastic? Yes, it is. It's to what extent, which parts of it are already formed into the functioning part that it was meant to be formed from. So how formed is it as a child? I think we can just look at physiology and we can kind of say there must still be a maturation. There is still things going on. And there are things closing down. So like the language centers. So if we kind of look at the language centers, it's not impossible to learn a new language as we get older. And some people do have, I can't remember the word for people who can learn lots of different
polyglots.
Polyglots, thank you. But again, that kind of, just even the odd polyglot, or however many polyglots there are, kind of throws that theory into question, right? Because you've got these language centers that, I'm trying to remember who was it? Was it
Chomsky?
Chomsky, yeah. He said the language centers closed down.
Which makes evolutionary sense, right? So I'm Swedish by birth. I grew up in Sweden. Let's say I did it 1,000 years ago. I had to learn Norwegian, Danish, and Finnish, and maybe some Sami as well. And once I'm 18, probably not much need for me to learn many more languages. I've already established what they are. However, when it comes to learning who you are and who my dad is and how they're different, which attachment theory says that I learned from my dad and then apply it to you, I actually have to be more dynamic. And that's what we see, that there's very little correlation between how I treat my boss and how I treat my dad. So some of these things are very plastic, they're relational stuff. And some of these things do kind of settle in how you work.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the whole argument that we're up against here we're up against the mainstream, right? Because the mainstream wants to say that things are predicated, that there is a predication, there's a kind of a main vein of kind of correlates that we can look at that branch off in different directions and explain why somebody becomes domestically violent, or why somebody becomes a sexual predator, or why somebody's stable, or why somebody. But I guess the issue here is what we're kind of saying is we don't think it's that simple. We really think that there's much more to it. It's much more complicated than that.
So we're saying that it's brambles.
Yeah.
With 50% genes, or I'm saying that. And culture, overall culture, the politics, the religion, the parenting, whatever, yeah? All of that matters together. But there's one thing we haven't talked about. What do we do about it? Mm-hmm. Because what the way that we diagnose you, well, of course, having like you broke a bone or you've got a hearing problem will affect whether we put that in a cast and give you a hearing aid, right? So in the same way, if we say the bigger culture is a problem, lack of meaning, lack of direction, choices you make, if that's the problem, well, then we work in the here and now. But if we say that it's all in the past, and once you understand the past, you will magically be free from the past. Mm-hmm. Well, then we should talk all about the past. Mm-hmm. My experience, even in myself, of realizing, this is why I'm so picky, or this is why I'm like that. I was still picky. I was still like that. I had a bit of closure going, it was due to my dad, my mom, whatever, right? Or my peers bullying me or something like that. But what made the change was the choice in the here and now. So in terms of bullying, in terms of being insecure, I can go back to primary school until the cows come home and go, that was and it was.
Mm-hmm.
But it was not until I actually then decided, okay, I got to change this. I'm going to do something about this. And I did.
You moved on, so you moved away from that position,
just like you,
and like I did, and I had a whole host of horrible experiences as well.
Well, you tried many times and slid back,
right? Yeah.
But now you're there.
I did, and I suppose you mentioned something about diagnosing people, and we get into that whole language about whether we should bring that language of diagnosis to a person, because we're borrowing from the medical terminology there, and we're kind of bringing that in, and we're talking about things that are relationship based. So by nature of relationship, it's kind of, there's so much that's arbitrary, there's so much that's here and now, there's so much.
There's been loads of critique against. I mean, now we're up at DSM 5,
close to 6,
right? Close to 6, yeah. And I hope that we never make the 6th. I think we use that for firewood in places that need it, because it's silly. There are neurological illnesses like Alzheimer's, whatever, right? There are issues, but they can be dealt with by a neurologist. The rest of us exist on a range of continuums, of spectrums, right? Or spectra, I guess.
That famous word, the spectrum.
Yeah, the spectrum. Yeah. And, we're all like from introvert to extrovert. Sure. We're all from openness to not open. We're all have a bit of crazy thoughts. We all have we have thoughts, yeah? Sure. Thoughts become voices in the head. Some people even think that the voices in the head are not themselves, so then over there lies psychosis. It's a continuum. And that's why if you have 3 psychiatrists and 1 client, you get 3 diagnoses.
3 different diagnoses, yeah.
So bipolar psychosis, whatever.
So is it enough, though, to say that everything exists on this kind of range of a continuum? Does that capture it? Is that sufficient, or is it at least just a beginning point to look at it differently? Because I'm sure I've witnessed what we call mental illness. I've witnessed somebody relapse back into a schizophrenic state. I've watched them relapse back into a psychotic state, and it's real. These people are gone; they're not there anymore. They become their symptoms, if you like. They are enveloped by these experiences, and it's frightening. And there's this deep sense of.
And at the end of these spectrums, right, or these spectra, we got to Google this, and then you can edit it in post production, so we get the grammar right. At the end of these spectra of autism, you're not very useful to the tribe. A little bit on them, you are the best spear maker, making the best spear. If anyone interferes with you, you are fantastic.
You're the main.
Yeah, like psychosis, you're the shaman, right? ADHD, you're the best hunter.
So should we go back to Spartan times then?
Well, I don't think I would make it very, very long unless I can be the shaman.
Yeah. No, but honestly, it's just the different ways I think that we've struggled to be with these scary experiences, these different experiences.
And we put labels on it because it's nicer to say that you're inhabited by the demon Beelzebub, or the demon Asmodeus, or the demon this, or you're we can say ADHD or autism, but I think what's more useful to say is that look.
Yeah.
90% of us here in Bristol can function absolutely well in society. They can adjust.
Sure, Nicholas says.
So 10% remains.
Right.
Out of those, these numbers are not exact. I made them up right now.
Yeah.
5% might need special accommodation. Yeah.
So Serning, not et al.
Okay. Yeah. So in 2025. 5% might need special accommodations, right? Yeah. Because they're too shy, they're too picky, like me, OCD, whatever it is. And 5%, they're just not going to function. That's where that psychotic guy that you hypothetically mentioned, yes. So there is support, and we can call that mentally ill. We can call it Susan for you like. But we don't need to go down and say that, is this actually EUPD or BPD, and to what degree is it linked into a nascent depression? It's like having a really tricky time, and it's really manipulative relational stuff. Okay, that's all we need. Formulation, not diagnosis.
Well, I guess I grew up with a whole lot of sociopaths and psychopaths, because not at the time they Bob and Joe and Mary, and
they were razor men, right?
Yeah, they were just people. To me, they were just the people I knew. And again, we kind of frame them and understand them in a particular way. Okay. And I guess we've also got to look at the way in which power works in societies, the way power works within cultures, the way power works within politics. And, there's the undesirables, isn't there, within society. I was one of them. Some people might say I still am. But the truth is I do keep thinking, and to talk about demons, I actually believe in demons. I believe in evil. I believe, as a Catholic, I believe in the teachings of Scripture. However, I do believe that kind of possession or the kind of the presence of, the absolute presence of evil is very rare. And I believe there are a lot of abuses used by the Catholic Church and by other people and other Christian kind of doctrines and around their interpretation of the individual, because they felt afraid of what they deemed as evil. So they wanted to stamp it out, and their way of stamping it out was to destroy it.
Exactly. So then whether it was the Templars or weird women that lived at the edges of society, and we call them witches, right?
The Magdalene schools in Ireland, where all of these young women who had children before they
out of wedlock, yeah.
Wedlock, yeah.
So yes, so that is, I think you find that in any group, including Catholic Church or any other religion, that of course you have abuse. As soon as you have power, you have abuse of the same, right? But in terms of, to go back to the diagnosis, chuck it out. Describe the person, which is formulation, not diagnosis. Assess their ability to function in society. And if they need special accommodations, or even if those accommodations, someone far out on the what we now call autistic spectrum, they're not really going to work in society. And I actually work with a supervisee in Glasgow, works at an autistic center. And these guys are not in society because they're severely autistic.
Sure. Yeah,
sorry, he's a Rangers fan. You might not like him.
Yeah, no, definitely not. No. So just getting back to Broken Roads, the book.
Yes.
Is there anything about the book itself that kind of, is there anything about it that kind of influences or kind of like shifts your view on anything in terms of the way in which you've more spoken about experiences such as mine? Or do you just kind of think that it just reinforces some of your already held beliefs?
No, well, I think my beliefs are thoroughly informed by the book in terms of like the non-linear trauma thing, the sliding door thing that, you could have worked when you were with a aunt and uncle. You slid out, you slid back. Hopefully you won't slide out again, but if you do, I hope you slide back. So that kind of dynamic, multifaceted, it's not just that works. If you ever write a second book, I would love to. This one describes the problem and how but more kind of describes an overview of how you got out of it. And I know it's probably impossible to say this was the thing that really helped. But I'd be really curious about like 10 things that you remember, maybe falsely, but maybe 7 of them are correct, that really screwed the nut, that really changed. Like I remember you talked about the military.
The detention center.
As an officer myself, I think, of course, that had a massive effect. But, coming out with shoulders like a bull, like how did that sense of empowerment, that perhaps was used in the wrong way as you beat someone up later, but how did that then cascade?
Well, I think those things became enduring influences. I wouldn't have even realized it at the time. It's on recollection when I look back. And of course, no one had ever taught me to be tidy, to take care of my my appearance, to kind of take responsibility. It taught me not to be lazy, and it taught me to be independent and self-sufficient. So all the things that the army would do, I totally didn't realize that's what it taught me. I just went off into the world and created lots and lots of chaos. But there was something about it that was enduring even to today, because it was a shifting point.
Yes.
And I guess it also influenced the type of rehabilitation programs that I offer people, because they are highly structured, because I do believe in that structure being the scaffolding that needs to be there in the absence of somebody still being so confused about everything. They're just in this fog. And I kind of talk about when people come into treatment, there's something, and I don't attend 12-step programs anymore. I don't have anything against them. I'm a great supporter of them. I think they're great, they're great utility. They do work. And I think there's something in the 12-step program that says that through our inability to accept personal responsibility, we were actually creating our own problems. One of the first things we do to people is we tell them to make their bed and brush their teeth. It's the real basic stuff. And people might think, well, how do I get to that, to a full flourishing life, if you want to describe it as that? But I would. And I think it's that, and that's where it starts. It's the real kind of simple, go to bed, put the lights out. No, you can't get up for a cigarette. No, you can't get up and walk around. No, you have to turn the TV off.
You're building resilience, you're building strength. And when the individual sees this strength, they get hope. I'm a person who can withstand the siren call for that cigarette. I'm a person who can make my bed in the morning. I'm a person who is so kind to myself in the morning that I give myself, my future self, when I come back, the gift of a nicely made bed. Let's see if I can give my future tomorrow morning self the gift of not having a smashing hangover. You're beginning to do something. And I think that's crucial. And that's where I keep on banging on like this dead horse, or this horse that I wish would die. That psychotherapists that then go, oh, you're sad. Don't make your bed. Like, really feel the feeling. Let's really sit with the feeling here. Stop it.
Yeah.
You're hurting.
Stop it, psychotherapist, doing that. If you do that, you're a psychotherapist. Stop it.
Don't do that. You get cancelled.
Anyway, the other key things was education. So the other thing was, because again, these are all things that are going against inherently, let's say, kind of implicit beliefs. So not aware that I held these beliefs against myself, but they were there. They were there nonetheless. And one of them was that I was stupid and I couldn't achieve anything. And maybe I'm oversimplifying that, but that's the essence of it. And I pretty much was, from a worldly point of view, kind of couldn't write an essay, couldn't spell, couldn't really read anything too complex. And this is where I see the crossover between both my faith and my ability, because I remember getting my first essay, went on an access course, and I had to write I can remember the essay title. You would remember the essay title because I was so annoyed with the mark that I got. So they had just done away with being able to write your essays in hand. Not that it would have been any good, because I don't know if my handwriting was that good anyway. And you had to type. So I had to get myself a computer, which was an old computer, a 3.5-inch floppy disk, and I had to get myself a dot matrix printer. Now, just the mere act of getting all of those things to work, right, it was like voodoo for me. It was like this mystical kind of mystery. And I'm like, this is incredible. I've got these things to work. And I've done this here, and there's words on there, and I press that, and it comes out on this paper here. So I was incredibly buoyed by just that experience, and I was feeling like proper chuffed of myself. And I read all the books and all the bits of papers and the handouts that they'd given me. And it was, the essay title was something like, I'll say I'll remember it and I've forgotten it, but it was a language as an arbitrary conventional sign system. So discuss, and this was the communications module of the access to higher education. So I've done the essay, handed it in, waited, and on the day when the essays were being handed out, he's kind of giving it to everybody, and everybody's got the marks, and there's A's and B's and all this stuff, and I get mine, and it's I don't even think it was failed. It just said 20% see me, so it was like not even a mark, right? So okay, so at first shame, I felt ashamed, and then back and people, how did you do? And I was okay, yeah. So there I am. I'm little Colin again. That feeling associated. I'm not virtually little Colin, but those feelings that I had Oh, sorry. Max at the side. You can turn it completely off if you want.
You're off the grid.
I'm off the grid, thank you. Sorry about that. Good job. So anyway, are we still recording?
Yeah.
So I went back home, and I remember just feeling immensely ashamed, immensely, deeply embarrassed, and thinking, I'm just dumb, I'm stupid, I don't get this isn't for me. Who the hell was I to think I could actually even get close to doing a course that might lead to university? Of course, I'm just stupid. I must have been high at the time that I thought about doing this. I must have been out of my head. And then it went from there to hating the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So then I'm thinking, I'm gonna not literally kill the teacher, but I'm gonna give him some. And I just remember as I was kind of sitting talking to him, there was this kind of inner voice kind of just saying, just listen to him, just let him have what he's got to say. And he was so kind, he was so gentle, he was so respectful, and he just said, look, he said, it was really painful to give you that mark. He said, because I know how much it meant to you, I know how much effort you put into this, and I could really see a structure beginning to develop. But if I had given you a mark that allowed you to pass, I wouldn't be doing you any good. I wouldn't do you any good. He said, this is what's wrong with it. Yeah. And he explained to me. And I think all of those little things that were happening weren't just my personality. I believe that there was something moving. I call it the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit's at work in my life. And kind of just those little whispers, those little moments of just, no, don't react, just wait. Yeah. Just kind of sit back and hear what he's got to say. Because I wanted to go, you've just unpicked, you've exposed me for who I think I really am. How dare you? I want to be somebody different.
The beauty is he exposed you for who you are as someone not very good at writing an essay.
Yeah.
But he then exposed his own hope and faith in you to be able to write. Otherwise, if you were just an idiot, then why does he even need to talk to you?
Yeah.
But there was hope. This is how you do it.
Exactly. And I was so, when I look back on that, so that was a pivotal moment, because I went from there and obviously on into education. Never been a strong proponent of education. I think that my brain thinks far faster. I've kind of already written the essay when somebody's gone on, and I've gone, and then when it comes to stopping and meditating and thinking about, right, how am I going to produce this calmly and deliberately on paper? And so I've had mixed success. I've either done really well or somewhere in between. I've never really been a sharp academic as such, but my brain has always been very pragmatic. I've always understood the material. I've always and a lot of the stuff I've kind of found quite boring. In fact, I've kind of gone like, yeah, okay, it's like, I get that, but what's the point? What are we kind of driving at here? So I think education, because it taught me what I could be, what I could do, it actually gave me the ability to think critically, objectively, dispassionately about things as well. And it gave me a place to kind of pour some of my creativity into as well. And I think the final one for me was my wife, my love, my marriage, and my children. And those things just gave me the kind of the fully rounded bit. And I think so I think that and my relationship with God, primarily my relationship with God, because I had a relationship with God all the way through my book. If anybody could kind of look at it, I just didn't always call it that. I pushed it away, or didn't want to call it anything, or I was not talking to it because I believed it was not talking to me. And when I came back to Catholicism, it was a complete and utter reconversion. I had a really kind of transcendent, mystical experience where I had returned to drinking alcohol. I had been drinking for about 10 years, and not, it wasn't park bench stuff. I wasn't using drugs, and but I was slowly descending back into what I would have called full-blown addiction. I was on my way back there. And I tried to stop, several times. I tried to, I gave up for a year, but I was white-knuckling it the whole time, and then I gave up for 6 months, and I kind of knew it was kind of hopeless. And I just remember waking up in a lot of pain. just bad pain in my kidneys, in my back, in my stomach. It was, and I was bleeding, and I was terrified, and I was scared, and just something in me instinctively just thought, this is the alcohol. This is because I'd abused my body. You know, one thing we are resilient and we do adapt, but your body can't. You do pay, I believe, for all of the abuse that you put your body through, whether it's your fault. You know, of course you chose it on some level, but you know, whether you know, it doesn't matter. Your body's kind of objective in a lot of sense, and that was something that was really strange to me. I prayed to Christ on my knees, crying, and I said, "Please help me, just take this away from me." And He did, and I can't describe. I've never experienced anything like that. I've heard stories by other people. And I was just instantly converted. I wanted to know everything about the Catholic faith. I wanted to know everything about the saints. I wanted to know about the popes. I wanted to know about the, of course, you know, I went and studied in the course in America. And this kind of gave me a new lease of life. I mean, it wasn't like it wasn't like it helped me cope with the cravings or all the traditional things we talk about managing addiction with. It disappeared. It's still not there. I literally don't even think about, you know, to say that I think about it would be kind of like an overemphasis on there being a something to think about. It's just like as if it was never there, and I can't describe it. It's just gone, and that's amazing, and that's something that psychology and psychotherapy doesn't really have an answer for. But kind of going back to the book again. So, what do you think? You know, prolonged abuse. So you're talking about a culture of trauma, a culture where people are looking at adverse. It's really funny, isn't it? ACEs. If you look at ACEs, they've got these kind of abstract numbers. If up to 20% of people have got 1 or 2, and then another percentage have got 3 or 4. But 6 is the magic number, right? It's as soon as you get to 6.
3 was a magic number.
Well,
not an ACEs. So.
Yeah, 6. Well, 3. The song 3 is a magic number. Yeah, okay. But the 6 seems to be the magic number. And again, it just paints this picture of enfeebledness and kind of weakness and lack of resilience. Yeah. And it's an insult, you know, because if I think about myself, why would I even be a therapist? Why would I even offer services to people? Why would I have a product that's called hope? You know, hope lies this way. Yeah.
But I think for me, it's very logical. It makes absolute sense. Like, Philby, I'm going to use you. If we, after this podcast, go over like classic 2 men mansplaining, and we do the editing for you because we mustn't worry. Like, we mollycoddle you, right? And let's say that this happened throughout your childhood. You would have a very low idea of your own ability. You would learn that. If I'm not going to give the details of the other side of the argument, but if we treat you horribly and you were treated horribly throughout your prolonged abuse, of course you learn. Again, that's back to that. We are a learning system. It would be madness to say, and maybe we can count it, and maybe there should be some kind of broadly linear response with how terrible, too terrible, because there's an optimal zone of functioning, right? So if I continually never use my bicep, that is too low. Or if we make me carry super heavy things from my bicep, that's too much and it breaks it. Outside the optimal zone, in both of those situations, it will break. And because that's how the body learns. And you have to get that optimal zone of function. So prolonged abuse, but also prolonged mollycoddling will have detrimental effects on the bramble.
So the kind of the too much of anything kind of theory. So too much of being kind of caretook and kind of subsumed and kind of suffocated, or too much of kind of being absolutely ignored and disregarded and kind of like treated with no. But the point, I suppose, is the picture that's painted. I know they do paint a picture of hope. I'm not trying to say that's where they rest and the bus stops there. But I suppose it's like, does that picture accurately reflect my own sense? I'm talking about the academic world, kind of psychotherapy theories, kind of papers. They kind of talk about, the utilitarian vision of therapy, psychotherapy, the helping professions, mental health professions, for example. So they say that whatever would have happened that's caused this kind of rupture, or whatever they want to call it, trauma, whatever they might want to call it, we apply these treatments to it, and therefore a person can kind of move on from that. But there's this sense of people become forever fixated in this stuff.
See, I don't think they create a picture of hope.
You don't?
At all. No. I've seen hopeful Afghans. I've seen hopeful East Timorese. I've seen hopeful lots of other cultures that go, whoa, let's do something cool.
Mm-hmm.
And the po-faced psychotherapists, even the happy, I can make you rich, I can make you thin, implies that you're a bit fat and don't have enough money, right? There's a lot of focus on, you're broken, man. I can fix you, but you're broken. It's going to take a long time.
A lot of money.
A lot of money.
A lot of drugs.
I've realized I've been unfair in this interview. I think that there are very few psychotherapists that are actually out for the money.
There is just to say, unless you've got a different experience, the least amount of money I've ever made is through psychotherapy and counselling.
Well, you should join the army. They pay even less. Yeah. But the people in psychotherapy, these are high agreeability. So in terms of the big five, high agreeability, high neuroticity. I really care about you, and I'm really worried about you, and I really want to help you. And what can I do? Do you know anything? Is it? Attachment thing. Yes, here. How did your mom? It's understandable that if you're desperate to help because you're a good person, slightly naive, that you reach for those simplistic fixes. But I'm sorry, they're not a hopeful message. They're a nervous message.
So what about? So let me just kind of counter that a little bit by saying maybe what I'm kind of trying to nuance my response to the picture of hope is like the services that can help you. There's Mind. There's all of these types of services, right? There's these online services. These are pointing to a solution, right? Isn't it inherent?
That's their story.
That's their story, that they're pointing to a solution. What you're saying is that actually, though, they don't deliver it.
I'm saying that that if culture didn't create the problem in the first place, we probably wouldn't have that much of a problem. A. B. They are exaggerating the problem. They're exaggerating the need for exogenous as an outside support for the problem. Usually, you could just fix it yourself. They're exaggerating the way in which psychotherapy is privileged to help, as opposed to you and I going down and have a cup of tea and chatting about it, right? The idea that it needs to be a special magical space to do therapy, I think is really problematic. I think I don't speak that differently to my clients as in now these days, now that I'm officially out as not I'm still a psychotherapist, but the way I speak to my clients is very similar to how I speak to my mates down at the pub. I'm just trying to understand how their world works.
Is that deliberate, or do you think that you've just become, because this is my kind of part of the theory is that we eventually kind of merge into, maybe merge is too strong a word, but we actually become our own art in a sense. We actually just become, because this theory has been around that we become naturally therapeutic. We might not think of ourselves in that way, but we just, because that's who we are.
I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it that I'm kind of always curious about. But then I was when I was 21 as well. So, don't really.
Are you curious in the same way, though? Or do you bring a different kind of a different type of tempo to that curiosity?
When I was 21, or when I got my master's, I was 27 or something like that. I knew pretty much everything about it.
Of course.
I could throw DSM-4 TR.
What would that 27-year-old say about Colin in the book?
Oh, you would probably then put him in like the psychopathy addict thing needs.
So he'd be typeset.
Yeah. So, but as I've become disillusioned and as I've disavowed myself from that nonsense, What's left is me.
Yeah.
The only difference is that when I'm down at the pub, I expect to have 50% where we talk about my stuff, right?
And who's next to buy the round, right?
And who's next to buy the round, which will not be you, because we're not going to have you slide out around again.
Well,
but
no danger there of me buying around. I mean,
you got the big guy that takes care of you, which is brilliant. So, but the only difference is that since you're paying me, we focus on you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's in the pub.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, I kind of get that, because I think, again, I kind of draw the parallel to being Catholic. So some people kind of talk about Catholicism as if it's something they are when they go to church.
Yes.
And kind of, I'm Catholic everywhere. You know, I try to live out my faith. It's who I am. It's my identity. It's kind of rooted in Christ. It's rooted in the traditional beliefs of Catholicism. And I'm unapologetic about my faith, even if it does kind of upset or rustle some people's feathers. But I'm also curious to know why. A number of people we've invited on the podcast, I've had some questions about God. Do they believe, you know, just even broad questions like, do you believe in God? And if so, why? And if not, why not? And they've gone, oh, can I not answer that question because I don't want to alienate people? I just think that's curious. I understand why they might say that. And so, yeah.
So, but imagine, so you have a firm rooting in the traditions of the Old Testament and a firm hope in the gospel of the New Testament. Imagine that someone wrote a third testament, which was all about like which kind of clothes to wear and how to stand on one leg and the special importance of, I don't know, brown glasses. That's how it is for me with psychotherapy. I'm just ditching the third book. It's bullshit.
Yeah. No, and it's good. It's good to free yourself in that way. And I think it's been something that happened for me a long, long time ago, because none of the theories ever resonated with me. I just kind of thought some of them got interesting things to say. I like some of the quotes. I like some of the writers. I like some of the people. I was curious about their histories, where they'd come from. And I think for me, I got stuck for a while trying to learn all the theories, because I studied transactional analysis. I studied psychoanalytic theory, psychodynamic theory. I studied kind of humanism, like person-centered, the whole thing. And it was like, just like everything else, I was looking for something. It was like, where's this answer?
But you do have a benefit from having gone through all that. If you're trying to understand me, it'd be useful if you read some Dostoevsky, if you read some Calvin and Hobbes and some Superman and some Freud and some Camus and probably not any Deleuze, but you know, as long as you have the right attitude to Freud, it's a story, just like the Odyssey or the Iliad or Shakespeare. But when my clients come to me and they say, I met a girl, but she's from the different side of town. She's from Knoll West. I'm from Clifton. I don't go, it's automatically Romeo and Juliet. That would be naive. But I do draw from Romeo and Juliet. And in the same way, if someone says, I'm really pissed off with my dad, yeah, maybe I can draw upon Freud, but I wouldn't see it as the gospel.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that kind of drew me, because I spent almost 20 years in 12-step programs. I spent almost 20 years in adult child of alcoholics and dysfunctional family, self-help groups, codependency self-help groups, AA groups, gambling anonymous groups, and obviously working with addiction, like for a long time with a lot of people in a lot of different ways. So from people who, you know, mums and dads and people who are affected, to people who are entrenched, to kind of, you know, everybody. And I've worked with, you know, people who have committed every kind of offence, everywhere on that spectrum, with kind of different mental health presentations and stuff. The one thing for me that I saw over and over and over again was the healing effect, the transformative effect of just that human connection, that relationship, you know, again and again and again. And that was the one thing that did resonate with me was kind of the relational theories. Yeah. So when I kind of looked at that, I was kind of, yeah, there's definitely something in that, because what had happened to me is I didn't trust anybody. Yeah. You know, I didn't trust any, and for good reason. You know, so you would be like, oh, come on, you kind of, you know, why on earth didn't you trust people? You know, surely You had some good models that you could trust, but it was like, no, in different ways. And I didn't trust myself. So there was a tricky element of that as well. So as I got older, I was kind of like, it's not just the mistrust of others, it's also the mistrust of not relying on myself, not mistrusting myself, it's just not being able to rely.
Which is back to those abusive relationships you mentioned, like earlier, about learning.
Yeah.
It made absolute sense.
Sure.
If you grow up in a war zone, that you guard up.
Yeah.
And then as gradually as people try to stroke your chin, you're like, oh. Yeah. And you go, okay, I'll try that. Ooh, this is nice.
Yeah.
This is learning.
It is learning, and I think as well, if I think about even the gangs of Glasgow, so I walked all the time when I walked around in Glasgow as a young man, I walked around with a knife. I had an open razor, a Stanley blade, or I had a knife. And yes, I was a coward to some extent, but also I would use it. And, you know, cowards can be scared and frightened and dangerous, and that's the kind of the problem. But it took me a long time to put my knife down, to feel safe enough to put my knife down, because everywhere I went, it was a war zone. You know, everybody, someone from there was going to get me, or someone from here was. My whole world was kind of modelled in that way, and then to go from that world into the world of recovery was a complete, transformation.
Open up, talk to everyone,
talk to
strangers.
We had to hold hands and say the Serenity Prayer, and I was like, and if it was two guys I'm holding hands with, I'm like,
it's difficult.
Yeah, this is really weird, and then say the word God, and at the same time kind of thinking, what is God? Kind of saying the Serenity, Serenity Prayer is a beautiful prayer, and the whole prayer, there's an actual whole prayer of the Serenity Prayer. It's a beautiful prayer. And then to go through all of that process. So for me, I was going to different schools, different training. Sometimes I delivered them in different ways, motivational interview and solution focused and stuff around drug and alcohol, some TA stuff as well. But the bit for me was that when I was going into courses and I see people coming and train, I became so intolerant, because I was kind of like, that's not what happens. That's not how it works. Mm-hmm. That's not really what changes a person. That's fabric. And I used to listen to read case studies and books, and I was like, they're fabricated. There's no way that's a real client. Yeah. They're just not. That's just not how it works. And it was that kind of, can we just talk authentically? So some of what you've been talking about, where you're just kind of saying, yeah, it's just me in the room talking with a person. Yes, I have all this experience. Yes, I have these titles. And yes, I am a particular way. But I'm just giving this person my attention, having a conversation, and I'm curious, and we're seeing where things goes. And I think that the benefits of that, I used to say the benefits of a cup of tea. Sitting down having a cup of tea, somebody's just absolutely gone. It's just like, never mind therapy. It's like, do you want a cup of tea? Like clients who come to therapy and they don't want to talk, and the other therapists are, they won't talk, and I'm just, okay, ask them. The door's there. You can go. You can come back next week. Or you can go out, come back in. Or would you like a cup of tea? Do you mind if I get a cup of tea? And when I said this in some trainings that I was in, we're like, you're breaking the boundaries. It's really unhealthy. Why are you doing that?
Tea is the maternal breast. Yeah. You're substituting because it's internalized.
Just kind of nonsense. But
I've been there as well.
Sometimes all you need is just somebody just to be present. Sometimes all I need.
Sometimes all you need is love. I know it's a cliche, but it's actually true.
Yeah, and again,
sometimes all you need is a bit of a push.
And this is getting into this idea of love. So I'm going to be doing a podcast on C.S. Lewis's love. So there's four kinds of love, and there's a fifth kind that the Catholic Church teaches as well. And I'm going to be talking about what love is. So not why we need love, or whatever the title of the book is. So I'm going to be looking at that. It's a really interesting kind of thing to explore as well. And C.S. Lewis was a fantastic writer.
That Mere Christianity.
Incredible, yeah. So would you recommend my book to people?
Yeah, I do actually.
And for what? And why?
I haven't recommended it to a client yet.
Why not?
I think the risk would be, you think you have it bad? Look at my Glaswegian mate now. He had it bad. So in terms of victim Olympics, I know that you're not playing in victim Olympics.
So that's maybe a weakness of the book as well. Maybe
it's not weakness. It's like saying that I mean, all this calm on the Western Front. What was it called? The remark, that World War One book. It's, you had a horrendous experience, and that's what it was, and you should write about it as is. But I wouldn't give it to a client as someone who is paid to have compassion for them, because that would be a slap in the face, right? But what I do is offer it to supervisees, especially those that drink the trauma Kool-Aid, that do the linear, complex trauma. You are forever, frigged, whatever.
No.
But
okay.
So yes, then it's a good corrective of going no, you can actually pretty much go through everything. And of course, I know that with my colleagues in the army that have seen horrendous things. A little bit of my experiences in the field as well, and it's useful to know that when you think that you cannot take another step, this is something that Sandhurst taught me. You cannot take another step. Just beginning.
Yeah. The absolute resilience that we have as human beings that we can tap into is incredible, and it's being undermined by today's culture. I think they were learned to feel that we're made of broken glass. It's like, you know what, you can survive a punch in the face, right? Maybe 10, right, and you'll be okay.
I made those mistakes myself. My daughter fell over, twisted her ankle yesterday.
Yeah.
Oh, are you okay?
Yeah.
It's the most stupid thing to say ever.
Well, no, I understand. But maybe there's a time when we build resilience or bring people's awareness to their resilience, and there's a time when it's coming in my little precious thing.
Yeah.
And I think that we can, knowing the right time is an art, and I think my grandchildren, they fall over. They've done it themselves, right? They've kind of created a minefield on the floor, and they fall over. My first reaction is to pick them up and talk baby to them. And of course, why not?
Well, why not then? I would argue that I signal to my children, I've got two little things, that if I indicate that this might not be okay for you, that it might not be okay for them.
Yeah.
So I would actually counsel that when your kid falls over, you go, "You okay?" And if they go, "Okay, I'm okay," cool. And if they go, "No, I got a broken leg," then you go, "Okay." But you have that faith.
Yeah. And I think, them seeing your response, I do. I get it. It's complex and it's nuanced, and there's probably not a right. I wouldn't prescribe it. I wouldn't say to somebody, take that, use that as a kind of an analogy to prescribe your own responses to, things in the world and your relationships with children.
There's something about, just riff onto this idea here. There's something about the cuddly feeling I get inside my heart when I go, "Oh, are you okay?" Because I'm needed and I am essential, and this is important.
Well, you say something. I think you get into the heart of the matter. This idea of feeling that you are important, you matter to somebody. That's so important.
It is very important, but as parents, we probably shouldn't. I mean, it's definitely not. I definitely was not abusing my daughter by going, "Oh, are you okay?" But if we put it into continual practice, that we mollycoddle and kind of do our kind of vicarious trauma through our children, and we're really worried about them all the time.
Yeah. But that's not that, is it?
It wasn't that. No. But the extreme version of it, right?
Yeah, sure.
So let's be careful in our Western.
Is that too much of anything again, isn't it? Doing it too, and also enduring. So if it's what you always do at every age throughout that child's development as they grow older.
I was school today. Oh, I didn't like maths.
Yeah. I can't even get. Yeah, of course, that'd be terrible. It's just yucky, isn't it? So 3 books that people should read before they die.
Oh my God! I sat down with my partner Nina, and we discussed this at length.
Right.
Calvin and Hobbes.
Okay.
Comic books. Yeah.
Right.
There's an anthology like all of them, and it is actually better than most psychological literature. It's hilarious.
Right.
The Bible.
Yeah.
I think it has, whether you are a Christian or not, think especially the Old Testament. So the wisdom, the subtlety of the Old Testament is shocking. There's a reason why it's kind of kept its usefulness for so long. Third, Judith Rich Harris. She sadly passed away a few years ago. She was a totally self-taught, not academic, that read all the genetic papers, had really interesting theories. Some of them don't really hold water, but about how people develop into beings. So my favorite book of hers would be No Two Alike. So no two twins are alike. Judith Rich Harris.
Okay. And I'll come to Judith's book in a minute, but going back to, I mean, the anthology you were talking about sounds interesting, so I'll be intrigued to get the details. We can stick that in the description if people are interested in going and look that up. The Bible, when I think about the Bible, the New Testament and the Old Testament, I think it puts psychotherapy and psychology to shame. I think it puts theology and philosophy to shame, because I think that more has been forgotten, more has been disconnected, detached, and moved away from. And if we look at these kind of original sources, and even the things like the Psalms and these kind of, they're almost love letters to God. They're appeals. They're kind of this kind of real kind of longing for a kind of to have a love affair with your Creator, and who wants to have a love affair with you? Not in a sexual way, but in a kind of a deeply, in an innermost kind of deep way. And I listen to a lot of people who kind of critique the Bible, philosophers, both those who are religious and both those who are not. And some of the most, I suppose, there's quite a lot of people who just study it. They study the book. They study, Old Testament scripture for different reasons. And I just think that I'm always amazed at things that kind of people draw out of it and how that wisdom was kind of being discussed then. So, because I always think about people in the Bible as kind of primordial, almost kind of, they're so far in the past. It's like, had square wheels and, but the Bible tells us a different story.
But you have to read it looking actively for wisdom. If you read it trying to go, oh, look here, this is what they say about how we should treat gay people. Yeah, it looks pretty bad. As does the Quran, and so does the Bhagavad Gita, and it's whatever. But if you're actively looking for wisdom, if you're trying to get into it, I think it has a great trove of wisdom.
And I think the New Testament, which was in a sense kind of sweeping parts of the Old Testament away, and so your kind of Pharisees and your Sadducees are kind of like becoming very legalistic. They're kind of bringing the old interpretation of Scripture, and it's being swept away by these revelations from Christ, who's beginning to kind of tear up the fabric of what we've known. And the world has gone in a different direction since that point, and we're still on that journey. And I think that those things, for me, I'd always ignored them. I never had the eye. They say you have to have the ears to hear and the eyes to see, and I didn't. It was only when I've gone back and I look at these things, and suddenly I just realized how much I missed out on, how much I deprived myself, how much I was deprived of kind of this richness of knowledge about myself, the way the world works, about values, about endurance, about resilience, about who we are, our identities, what our capacities are, the way in which we work, about our authentic anthropology. And I think, again, one of the courses I went on with the kind of CAF Psych Institute, their position, if you like, is that we have a lot of the, let's say, downfall of psychology, social sciences, and psychotherapy has been because we have an inaccurate sense of human anthropology. We're lost. We don't have the proper. But we're like, no, we've rejected the true anthropology, which is what the church teaches, and we've done away with that. And we're now searching for it. We're now trying to reconstruct it. And because every single reconstruction isn't authentic, it just kind of falls down. So when it gets tested by kind of objectivity, by truth, it just falls away. Which, going back to your third book, sorry, the lady's name was?
Judith Rich Harris.
Judith Rich Harris. Look, I remember 1998 seeing a book on individual differences. It said just that same thing. It said no two people are alike, and lo and behold, what does the Bible say? There's no two of us that are alike. Each of us are made, fearfully and wonderfully made. There is no other Nicholas and never will be. There's no other Colin, there never will be.
And the world is a better place for it.
The world is a better place.
Both of us.
So, three favorite actors and why?
Oh Lord! Did you 3 favorite actors? Yes, I've got that. It's a very silly list. Ryan Reynolds. He's just so cool, especially in his interviews and stuff. He's got the gift of the gab. Zach Galifianakis. So this is guy from The Hangover. He is just
between the ferns or something like that. He does,
between the ferns. Yes,
yeah.
He writes all his own stuff. So when people are taking him down, it's him taking himself down. Yeah. He's not that fat,
He's from the Hangover movies.
Yeah, and Brad Pitt because he's gorgeous.
Yeah, Brad Pitt. A lot of people say I still look like Brad Pitt.
Yeah, I think you were going for the Joe Rogan experience here, but but in the podcast.
Right, so 3 favorite musicians and why?
Obvious is Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach.
Right.
It's. I know it sounds silly, but that is divine music. It is shockingly, insanely. You cannot explain. Listen to it. Second, Esbjörn Svensson Trio, EST, is a Swedish jazz trio. Sadly, the pianist, died in a diving accident, but they're fantastic. EST, Esbjörn Svensson Trio. And I realize I'm ending my relationship with my partner by saying this, but George Michael. I mean, it's good. Right. You like it.
Oh, okay. It's a tragic life, actually. I think out of all of those, I think with classical music, I'm always kind of blown away when we can compare to kind of current music. But George Michael, I kind of grew up, obviously, around all that kind of music. So I grew up in contrast with mod and punk and kind of ska, and then came New Romantic and George Michael and all of that kind of stuff. And I suppose there's a softening. I liked his older stuff when he, Ladies and Gentlemen, and he was talking about his faith. He was talking about his heartbreak and his relationships. He was talking about visiting the grave of the person, his partner who died with his partner's mum. He was talking about his almost like his psalms to God, where he's kind of like,
some gorgeous stuff. Patience.
God. Yeah.
Can't believe we're riffing about George Michael.
Yeah.
We're such nerds,
Yeah. Well, and
We'll
again,
cut this out later, yeah. Maybe change it to someone cool like Michael Bublé.
Yeah. Cool. But I think George was an intensely kind of sharp character, intellect, very intelligent, was caricatured, and he tried to break out of that caricature. And of course, with his same-sex attraction, kind of garnered a lot of kind of attention, and he tried to market that. And then in the end, I don't think that the world was quite ready to kind of give, because the official death report says that he died of natural causes. He died of a heart attack, it was natural causes. Okay. And they tried to say it was all, but we don't know. This is the problem. It's just like, there's that question, I think, where we kind of go, okay, somebody's in the public eye, and therefore it's fair game, right? You're famous. It's meant to be fair game, and whatever you might feel about that. But I think at the point of where somebody passes from this world, I think that's where, we should start to kind of think about the fact that this was child of God. This was somebody who will never be repeated. This is somebody who's left this world. And we learned so many things about George doing so many kind of charitable things.
Yes, and he wouldn't tell anyone.
He wouldn't know. And I think he really was influenced by his kind of Greek Orthodox religion.
Yeah.
I think he really was, and I think he really kind of struggled throughout the rest of his life with his relationship with his faith, and I think that was in his music. He was a beautiful man, for sure. 3 things you'd like to take to your desert island, right, and why?
I mean, can one of them be my survival kit? Because that would then like contain
Sure
like,
Island.
okay,
Sure
my
Island.
island.
Sure Island.
Okay, so that will contain like a pot, a knife, and a cover. That's like a basha,
Right.
cooking pot, and a knife. That's good. I'll keep my medical kit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you did say things, and this is the second time during this podcast that I'm destroying my relationship. We've been together for 10 years.
Right.
Been a good ride, Nina. I would take Nina.
Right.
But she's not a thing. That's
Okay.
not how I mean it.
Okay. So things, yeah. So maybe we should just say what you would take to, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Edit that later.
What would you take?
Nina,
Yeah.
my love.
Interesting. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say to anyone watching?
No, I think we covered it very well. Thank you very much.
Okay. No problem. And any last questions for me?
No.
And where can people contact you?
So my last name is Serning.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to read more, then it's got some articles there, got a book I wrote. So Serning, so it's www.serning.com.
And that's SERNING.
Perfect. SER, Sierra, Echo, Romeo, November, India, November, Golf.
Perfect. Okay.
And so there's loads of links there and stuff.
Perfect. Okay. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. This has been episode 2 of Broken Roads, and I'd like to thank you. It's been a great episode.
Thank you.
Good.